302. Wendy, let's go ahead and do roll call.
Nancy Henderson.
Here.
Steve Bancher.
Here.
Eric Mueller. Connor. Dave Rittman. Sorry, I'm multitasking. Seth Reeser.
Here.
Ashton Simpson.
Present.
Lori Stegman, it's not available. Emerald Bowe.
Oh,
I see you, Emerald, did not hear you. Corky Collier.
here.
Michelle Altman. Here. Mary Helen Kincaid. See Mary Helen. Penny Stephenson.
Here.
Eric Molander.
Here.
Brent Cartwright.
Here.
Ed Washington, I do not see present. Rob Salinger, do not see present. Heather King.
Here.
Have 11 board members present currently.
Thank you, Wendy, and thank you all for taking the time and being here on this beautiful day again. We're going to get started. We're going to do the order of the agenda a little differently than it's presented because we do have a special guest with us today, Mr. Reed Wagner. Thank you, Reed, for being here. Hello. We're going to start, though, with the September minutes. So those are included in your board packet. I hope you've had a chance to take a quick look, and I would entertain a motion to approve those September minutes at this time.
And I did make two non-substantive corrections that Eric Molander, Eric Mueller pointed out to me.
So these are the amended minutes as corrected. Thanks, Wendy.
I'll motion to approve the board meeting minutes.
Thank you, Heather. We have a motion from Heather King to approve the September board meeting minutes. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
I have a second from Tammy Stephenson to approve those minutes. We're just going to do a voice vote all at the same time here. All those in favor, please, of approving the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion to approve September minutes passes unanimously. Thank you. We're going to move straight now to our item number 4 on the agenda, which is legislative modifications and the alternative fee analysis update and discussion. Turn over to Jim for that. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your time. And I'm going to quickly overview steps staff has initiated after the last board meeting and the format meeting, which is all the legacy boards coming together. Real quickly, as you may recall, Councilor Ritma had proposed a series of alternative revenue options. And while the board did vote to move forward with legislative modifications, I felt it was prudent and that there was a clear appetite among the urban board and the legacy boards to do a little bit of review and deeper dive on some of Councilor Ritma's proposals. So just a brief update on the work that's underway. We have hired Reed Wagner, the former executive director of MCDD and a well-known regional asset. And so he'll talk a little bit more about the work that he's doing to engage a number of you and other stakeholders. We've also asked our outside counsel to work on some additional modifications to our initial legislative modifications. So we have Miller Nash working with us to continue to refine the legislative modifications language as a result of the direction from the board. Staff did organize with our outside lobbyists a meeting of all the government relations staff in the region, and Seth was there, so he could probably report on it, as well as Councilor Ritma. And they evaluated both the staff recommendation and also those additional proposals from Councilor Ritma. So we've got the legal review going, we've got the political review going, and Lori, in consultation with Echo Northwest, is going back and reviewing some of the past work and also doing some additional calculations on how some of those ideas might translate into costs for individual homeowners or businesses in the district. So we're moving on all those fronts, the political, the fiscal, the legal, and financial fronts to pull that information together. And again, we've contracted with Reed Wagner and his firm to pull all that information together and to also do some independent conversations to make sure we're actually hearing from folks. Two other things that came up that I want to address. One concern or a couple concerns from Board Member Stephenson about potential indemnification for legacy board members. So our outside counsel is also working with Brian Sheets, who's SDSC's outside counsel, to address that issue. And then both legal, government relations, and Lori are looking at all of the tools available to us to restrict and encumber legacy district funding as it transfers over to the urban board, so that those funds would be used within those districts and for the purposes which the legacy boards have appropriated them. And we have some great ideas for how we can do that. And we agree as a staff with doing that. So again, it's really just, I think, finalizing the mechanisms and bringing in the language that demonstrates that commitment and hopefully meets your satisfaction with that. So again, we're progress on indemnification, progress on constraining funds coming from the legacy districts to address concerns, and progress on evaluating both the current staff proposal that the board adopted and the additional revenue ideas. And with that, if there are questions for me, I'm happy to answer them. But I think it might be better for you to hear from Reed. Reed's not in a position to tell you results, but he is going to talk about the process that he's using to ensure that we've heard the concerns and done the best job we can with the time and resources available to address them. So if there are no questions for me, you can ask me later, but let's turn it over to Reed.
Thanks, Jim, and Chair Fancher and the board members. I appreciate you having me here. You know, this coalition, which started years ago, is just, it's so valuable to the overall community. I think it's so important that we sometimes take a step back and make sure that we can be as aligned as we can be before we move forward. And so I spoke with Chair Fancher and with Jim and did some initial background research just based on staff recommendations and board decisions up to the moment. I'm reaching out to board members. I've been fortunate enough to meet with some already. Some I'm attempting to schedule, and a few of you I will intend to reach out to in the next day or so to schedule some time next week. I'm also meeting with folks in Salem, including a meeting tomorrow with the governor's office. And I think Chair Fancher is going to be able to join us so that we can talk about, approach and some specific proposals that have come across and talk through those. We're meeting with Regional Solutions, which is an arm of the governor's administration that is able to bring together multiple departments, and I bring subject matter experts from those departments to help with community issues and challenges. So these are the steps that I'm taking to try and bring back to you, hopefully, at your work session. I believe it's the first couple days of November. Some suggestions for the board moving forward, and share some ideas and perspectives so we can have a healthy and important conversation. That's where I am in the process. I want to thank the board members that have already given up their time, and thank in advance to those board members who I'll be reaching out to. And Mary Helen, thanks for getting back to me. I owe you an email, and look forward to meeting again in a couple weeks.
Excellent. Thanks for the update, Reed. Thanks, Jim. Just open it up for questions, comments, discussion at this time. Sorry.
I just want to make a comment that I'm again having camera problems. So I'm just a black space and you're not missing anything by not seeing me. But I'm not quite sure when Microsoft did an update and the camera disappeared. So anyway, I'm here, and thanks, Reed. Look forward to talking to you.
Thank you very much. Just so you know, my camera's not working either, so we're in it together. You're all better off for mine now.
I think the whole world went sideways today. So that's my conclusion.
Thanks, Mary Helen. Seth?
Yeah, I have a question. So at the last board meeting, we voted on a legislative direction to explore. When does that need to be finalized? And I know that you're working with Reed as a consultant and having some discussions. When does all that need to realistically wrap up and a final decision be made for the board?
Well, the board already passed a resolution or passed a motion saying we can move ahead with the staff recommended legislative modifications. Again, we're looking for any ways that we can improve that between now and when a bill is due. And I'm not seeing Colin on the line. I believe the deadline for initial bill concepts is November 9th. So there's still time after those initial concepts are submitted, obviously, for changes and amendments. But our initial target, I think one of you government relations experts who's on the board might be able to correct me, but I believe we need to get our concept into legislative council by November 9th.
So the board resolution passed 10-6, and we talked about that at the government affairs meeting, and there's seemed to be general agreement that taking forward a legislative ask without unanimous or near unanimous support from the member organizations was problematic. So I guess the nature of my question is, are we trying to get to a consensus vote, or we have a direction that we're moving forward with from the last proposal?
Some of that's really up to the board. Staff is going to bring back additional analysis and information about Councilor Whitman's proposals and our strategies for addressing, excuse me, the other concerns the board raised.
Okay,
So you want to make a motion or change the direction?
So when is, I guess the question then is, when is that coming back, and when do we have to finalize whether or not we're trying to arrive at consensus or moving forward with the original motion?
Our objective is to bring that report to you at your upcoming work session. You have to make any decisions related to that after that.
What's the date of that? I'm sorry.
Remember?
November 1st.
November 1st.
Or we'll keep you a motion of that.
Yeah.
So we can notice it appropriately if we need to. Again, we can also take direction from the board and so on. So our objective is to bring more support in. That's why we're working really closely with Tammy and Dave and some of the others who raise these concerns. So I hope that we can come back and have some of your colleagues who express those concerns feel comfortable suggesting that we've addressed them. And if not, then the board will have to conclude what it wants to do. Our goal is to address those concerns. We agree with the concerns. We think there's a path forward to getting them addressed to your satisfaction, but we're not there yet.
So there could be, sorry, there could be some value in us deciding to have that be a business meeting as opposed to a work session if need be. So thanks for bringing that up, Seth. And you have a follow-up?
Not at the moment. Thanks.
Okay, Corky?
Well, I think what I heard.
Please, in your mind.
Sure. I think what I heard Jim saying is, if we pass motion in November, later in November or even December, that's still before the legislature starts to meet. So you're still saying, oh, we all voted on this again. Is that what you're getting?
Until the legislature votes to adopt legislation, there's a chance to change it. The sooner we can get the board to agree to move forward with something, the easier it will be to be successful. But the deadline is sunny die, right?
But this board's already agreed.
Yeah, almost. You know, we think we can do better and we want to do better. And we think the concerns that were raised are worthy of an attempt to address them. And I think I'm again confident and hopeful that by that work session, you'll all be on board. But if not, we'll have to decide what the next appropriate steps are.
Well, I guess what I'm getting at, should we plan on a formal motion in that meeting, or is that really necessary?
It's really up to the board. The board has already said to pursue legislative modifications. I think what we're attempting to do is get more support for those modifications. But at service of the board here,
Yeah.
so.
It's interesting. I mean, it's a good question, and some board members may want an opportunity to more formally, at a business meeting, express support or not. So yeah, it's worth thinking through. Yeah.
And so here's kind of my what I talked about at the government affairs meeting was we have 3 things moving forward at a fairly tight timeline. One of which is by March 12th, hopefully getting something passed in the short legislative session related to the operating revenue model. And then the GO bond campaign that's launching and going to be taking a vote in May, which is about 6 to 8 weeks later. And then the election of permanent board members in that same May 2024 election. And my concern that I raised was if we don't go forward with the consensus, kind of a more consensus recommendation as part of the legislative short session, then that puts that timeline in more jeopardy, which then affects the other 2 timelines that are kind of dependent on that, which is the bond election and then the election of permanent board members. And so if we decide as a board not to reach unanimous or near unanimous consensus on the legislative path forward, then I think we need to spend some time planning on what plan B is if one of those cards doesn't go the way we want to, and whether or not it's still realistic to move forward with a July 2024 timeline.
Would tend to agree. I would say that the bond and the election of the board are not necessarily, they're not all locked together per se.
No, but if we aren't successful in the getting a new operating revenue model passed in March, I think that puts the question of are we going to pass the GO bonds in May in jeopardy.
It's question.
We'd be trying to pass a GO bond without having a viable method for operating revenue.
I think you raised an interesting point that the board should talk about amongst itself, which is a majority of the board has supported the staff recommendation. And I think this board should probably take some time to discuss among yourself what obligations that creates for all the board and what direction you want to provide to staff. Because I'm in a position where a majority of you have told me to move forward. I've also received direction to do more homework on a few proposals, which I'm doing. But at this point, a majority of the board has told me to move forward. And as board members, I think you need to think about what your obligation is as a board member, given that a majority of you have said to move forward. But again, that's your call, not mine.
Yeah, and Jim, just to be clear, I'm not necessarily posing that question to you. It's probably more a question to the board and to Chair Fancher in terms of what do we want our discussion and board time to look like with that in mind.
Thanks, Eric.
I just wanted to reiterate Seth's point. I mean, the critical issue here is whether or not the legislature changes our capabilities. Whoops. Have you? Yeah, okay. I think that you can hear me. So if the legislature does not approve those changes, it does throw into jeopardy going to the public with the GO bond. And so we as a board need to think about what plan B is. Now, when would you, or under what circumstances, Steve, would you want to have that discussion?
Thanks, Eric. I do think, given the vote that we had, the 10-6, it wasn't majority, it was majority, but not obviously unanimous. I think we acknowledged at that meeting that we have work to do. Staff's doing that work now. I do think it would be extremely valuable, as Seth says, as you're saying, Eric, for the products of that work and the work that Reed is doing right now to come back to the board before or early on in that legislative kind of review and process, enough for us to come into better alignment for sure. I agree. I don't know exactly what that looks like yet, but,
Okay.
I agree with both of you.
Got it. All right, thank you.
And I would just share that on the bond, there's political risk, but not legal risk. And so again, we have to assess what we think that political risk is as a result of uncertainty and action on behalf of the legislature. Colin has joined. I will say that we're having good conversations with the delegation, and the delegation is aware of our conversations. We identified a commitment for a committee bill. So again, to the degree that majority of the board is able to direct staff without people who aren't in the majority opposing actively, I think we will be successful. And again, that's a conversation for this board to have about the obligations of individual board members when a majority has made a decision.
Thanks, Jim. Comments, questions? Discussion? I mean, I agree with what you're saying, Jim, and everyone has an obligation. We also acknowledge that we didn't have the actual language of legislative changes in front of us, and acknowledge through the process if parties weren't amenable to the language as it came forth, that there was always the risk that it wouldn't be supported by a city or cities at the legislature, and that wouldn't be good, right? So that's why it is worthwhile for us to continue to refine the language and then the transparency to the board of what it says, and try to do the rest of the due diligence to pull folks in that weren't in favor. It's just beneficial for all of us in the district. See a lot of contemplating right now, contemplating faces. I don't see a lot of questions or hands being raised. That's fine, but I think this is very important discussion we're having right now. Obviously, we had there's just a ton of work going on behind the scenes and with a lot of you with staff. So please, if you're thinking something, now's the time to bring it up and discuss it. Eric.
I guess I would just say that I think the comments so far have been good, but I think it all boils down to we're going to have to wait till our next meeting till we get some of these reports that have been referred to. I believe, I've seen people disagreeing, but in good faith disagreeing, and I haven't heard anybody that said they're not willing to listen to, is there a better idea that's potentially coming or coming up. So, I think we continue to be open to information, but we also have to continue to move forward because the calendar isn't going to stop for us.
Thanks, Eric.
And just as another aside, as a representative from an organization that has an elected board, we're getting in front of our council next week to talk about some of the issues. We won't have a defined proposal or a final proposal, it sounds like, at that time. So by the time I go back and present an update on kind of what's going forward, that's going to end up being January time. And at that point, if any of my elected officials have any serious problems with it, I can vote to move forward with the legislation, but that does not bind them from saying we don't like this and we don't want it. And there's not going to be enough time for me to run that past them before we're actually in the process of lobbying for that. So we're hitting that crunch point where there's a timeline issue for not just keeping board members updated in consensus, but also the people that we answer to.
Mary Helen, before I call on you, I want to make sure, I know Reed Wagner has to leave us here, and maybe he already did. No, he's still on. He has to leave at 3:30. I just want to give him an opportunity to say anything, close out before he has to leave.
Thanks, Chair Fancher. I'm looking forward to my conversations. I apologize in advance for being persistent with board members since we had on such a short time frame. But we can have specific conversations about these dynamics and then bring a broader conversation back to the full board. And I'm looking forward to it. So thank you.
Thanks, Reed. Safe travels. Mary Helen. Mary Helen, can you hear me? If you can, we can't hear you. You might still be on mute. There
Okay,
you go.
can you hear me now?
Yeah, can hear you now.
Okay. It helps to click on unmute. I am concerned as well, even though I don't represent a jurisdiction or have elected officials to respond to, but I have a number of neighborhood groups who are concerned. We have our Penn 2 annual meeting the 24th, and I don't know how it will be presented to them, but I think one of the major questions will be, what are we paying for and what are we voting for? And specific language kind of things. And since we don't have that, is there some sort of, and I've asked this before, business continuity plan if the legislature says, no, you can't make the changes, and we don't have another plan besides billing the cities? And have we gotten any response from any of the cities? I understood that Portland had responded in some fashion about the, I think, what's it? The latest called benefits tax, and how that's going to be handled. So it seems like there's a lot of balls up in the air, and I don't know where they're going to land or how they're going to explain. And it would be helpful to me as a board member, but to hear about the what ifs and business continuity plan, if what the best possible alternative is doesn't happen.
I think I can do that really clearly and simply, but tell me if I've been unsuccessful. The plan would be to draw the last year line of credit from the city of Portland to operate the urban district, and the plan would be to retain the legacy districts just as they are today for another year while we continue to go farther into debt and spend more money trying to solve this revenue problem. And in the meantime, the voters will either approve or not approve a bond, or you'll approve or not approve referring that bond. And if you wait, it will cost more and the community will be at higher risk for a longer period.
Okay, thanks. Because the other part of that, when you say even more in debt, somebody's going to be in debt. And then the question that I think Tanny and SDIC raised was the my question, and maybe it'll come out with the legal counsel, is if we've collected money for a specific purpose for our constituents, what kind of liability is there in turning that over for not what we collected it for? So I hope that topic gets explored as well.
The call when I started, but we have outside counsel working with Brian Sheets to address that issue. Staff agrees that that issue needs to be resolved. We believe there is a pathway to resolving it. We also agree that we should encumber any carryover funds from the legacy districts for the purposes for which the legacy boards appropriated them, and we're going to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mary Helen. Thanks, Jim. Other comments, questions, discussion? This is our chance. Don't make me call you out.
As staff, please, if there's something bothering you, tell us. Don't wait for 2 more weeks and drop another bomb on us. Tell us now. Call me. I want to help. We want to address these concerns. We can't do it if we don't know what they are. Thank you. I guess one last comment. The legislative modifications proposal is quite clear. Y'all voted on it. It's to transfer the assessment authority and to impose a flood safety benefit tax on the cities allocated by population. We may have some tweaks to that based on the work we're doing on behalf of Councilor Ritma that will make that proposal stronger, because it will reduce the impacts of depression that we've already reduced by almost 75%. In which case that should only solidify support rather than weaken it. So I guess I appreciate all the hand wringing. Trust me, I lose sleep every night over all of these things, but the thing that you can do to help us express your concerns and let your staff address them. What I'm hearing is a lot of fear. I have it too. The way we deal with that fear is to move forward together and to be candid with each other about what our concerns are so that they can be addressed. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Oh, no. I'm just gonna let the uncomfortable silence persist for a little longer. Because I know that you guys have additional questions, additional thoughts. I don't want to cut this meeting short. We don't have, other than this was the main topic today. We could talk about vice chair stuff and come back to this, but I feel like this is the meat of the day. So, Seth.
I don't deal well with uncomfortable silence, so
I can hear all day. So.
No, the question I have is more procedural. So you're saying sounds like we're trying to get an updated proposal that incorporates some of the concerns that were raised at the last meeting into a final proposal or modification to the already existing resolution. What is the best way to work if there is a proposed change or concern? What's the best way to ensure that that's incorporated and brought forward for discussion? Is that sending out a memo like Councilor Ritma did? Or is that waiting for that board meeting? What's the best way to get that in front of board members?
I'll attempt, and then I'll turn it over to Jim to correct what I say or to counter it. But I think, it's presumptuous to think that the research that's being done right now is going to result in a change for all. We don't know, right? So part of it is doing the research, contacting state agencies, others that were part of Councilor Ritma's plan to see kind of what's viable and what's not. It could come back with some possibilities to explore further or discuss with the board. If that's the case, I think if there's a substantial modification to what was passed, then obviously it needs to be brought back to the board for votes. But if not, it's just a matter of providing more information to the board on what research was done and that stones were turned over, but there wasn't. But there weren't new possibilities that would change the language, then that's more of an information session.
And Seth, we invited you and some others to that legislative affairs meeting for the purpose of hearing your concerns. So I guess if there are additional concerns or new concerns, we're already working what you've shared in the past into modifications. But if there are new things, I would ask that you pick up the phone and call me, or you're welcome to call Colin if I'm not there. Let us know what those are. And if you'd like to put it in writing so the full board can see it, send it to me and request that it go to the full board so that everybody can see it, and we will take care of that. People have different suggestions for transparency in this effort. I'm all ears. We're happy to share with you the proposed language. Colin's working with outside counsel. We have a meeting tomorrow to try to refine the changes based on the feedback. So we should. Again, Jeff Condit, our primary lawyer, has been on hospice watch for his father. He's just back to work. So we're doing everything we can to get those modifications done. We still have to have some additional conversations between our outside counsel and Brian Sheets to address some of the concerns Candy's raised. I'm meeting at 4:30 with our outside counsel to advance that work. So we hope by your work session, we'll have a lot of this material for you. I don't think Reed's report will be complete in advance for your packet, but we'll get it to you as it's done. So calling, I think, is the best thing. We'll do our best to incorporate your concerns. And Seth, I'm going to be in Wood Village on Tuesday, so I'm going to go over all this with your council. So if there's new after that, it would be really good to let them know in advance that this is their chance to try and articulate our concerns.
Or we can streamline things and you can just bring it up right now. You've got a good idea or a concern or question. Eric.
Yeah, so Steve, just quick sort of check on this. So tomorrow you're going to meet with the governor's staff. And if the governor's staff says, are you guys abandoning the fee for service as the primary revenue stream, what are you going to end up saying?
I think we're gonna explain the challenges that we've found with the fee concept and just be open. I think we're just gonna be open and honest about that, and that other tools need to be added to the toolbox. I don't know that it's an abandonment. If there's a way politically and technically to move that forward, even in the future, I think it's still in the legislation to allow fees to be charged, if utility fees, if there's a way to do it. So I wouldn't characterize it right now as, it's not an abandonment in a way that like you can never go back and try to enact, but it's adding tools to the toolbox.
Yeah, so because obviously they're aware of things going on in the city of Portland, and they realize that BES is proposing a new stormwater management fee that uses the very same mechanisms that we would use in assessing people within the managed flood district, managed floodplain, for their fees. So it's going to be important that, you know, we show that, yeah, we're working with BES and the Water Bureau, and if we can break through this, then we'll move people away from an assessment basis to more fee for service. Now, that's my distinct preference, because I think that from an economics perspective, that's the most effective way to gain resources relative to services rendered. And I'd like that to be reflected, as opposed to, no, we're going back to the old way and your way of thinking didn't work.
I appreciate that, Eric, and I understand it's a number of board members' preference to move away from the assessments. I want to mention it's not just Portland that is resistant to collecting assessments on their utility bills. The assessment amount on a utility bill, Gresham does too. Gresham does not. I don't have any indication from Gresham City Council that they'd be willing to collect those larger dollar amounts on a utility bill. It's not just Portland. Mary Helen.
On that same topic, I was, Eric much more eloquently asked it, but have you, if you're meeting with the governor tomorrow or about the legislative content, have you spoken to any of the senators that were opposed to all of those same things previously? And if they will be involved in the conversation to get their opinions heard on why they opposed those items? Tina Kotek was the House representative at the time and now is the governor. So she would probably she has an excellent memory. So she would probably remember the experience. And I believe it was Corky and I that were there, testified to the committee when the senators expressed their concern with the three items that you're going to go back and ask them. So I'm just wondering if you've had any conversation with any of those senators, if they're still involved. I know Chris Gorsuch is still active senator and from Troutdale. And you said, I don't know if you said or I misunderstood, that would that conversation be able to be viewed, watched, witnessed, or I would just like to be able, since I was part of this however many years ago it was, be able to be informed of the reactions from the different senators, because I think that would be pretty important to know before you went in the room, and I'm expecting that you do know that, and how you're going to convince them that what they thought then, they should not believe now.
I think that's a great idea, Mary Helen. I don't think there's been an effort to reach out to specific state senators at this time, but going back and seeing what the history was last time, you know, who's still around and putting together more of a legislative plan that way, it makes good sense. Colin, go ahead.
I just wanted to note that the original legislative concept that we had and was accepted and developed by Legislative Council included assessments as well as permanent rate and local option levy. It was a decision amongst the partners not to include, to include the assessments. And if any of the board members that were a part of that want to provide more input on that point, I think that would be good to hear. But as far as what was actually brought to the session, both the House bill and the Senate bill that we ran at the same time didn't include that. And so there wasn't really what the legislators were looking for was a consensus recommendation from the partnership. And what the pushback was and where there was further work done was on some of the green infrastructure, and there were some smaller pieces around water rights that were discussed. But encourage us to all probably take a look at some of that legislative language and history. And if anyone wants to provide any of the points there, but what was in Salem in 2019 didn't include the assessments, and there wasn't any issue with that. It was really looking for consensus, which I think is still what the legislators will be looking for.
Okay,
Thanks, Colin.
your memory and my memory are a little bit different, and I'm going to go with yours because you're younger and I'm older. But what I remember is Chris Gorsuch actually speaking out in the committee saying the Senate will not support these things. Your memory said that the partners did it. So however that gets translated, it was not accepted because of objections from the Senate side of the joint committee. Whether it was a House bill, a Senate bill, or a partners bill, whatever it's called, I do have somewhere in my banker's box full of papers, the hearing, what my testimony was, all of those things, and my notes. So it's my notes at the time. Maybe I don't know. It looks like Corky's sitting in the room. Maybe he has a different memory because we were there with Mark Landauer. I think you even mentioned the wild ride we had with Mark Landauer on the freeway, and I had my eyes closed most of the time. And so I have different kinds of memories related to that. But all of that said, I had the distinct impression both from Tina, I spoke to personally because she used to be in the Kenton Firehouse. And then her reaction to Senator Gorsuch was that it was the senator's objections, a joint decision by everybody involved, that this would be the best thing to do to go forward to get the urban flood, the district formed, and this is how it would go most expediently. So I since there was objection, it doesn't matter who did it or who decided, but how we're going to overcome why it was changed. And when you say partners, I'm not really who the partners were as defined of how you said that the partners changed the legislation. So I just saw that as an obstacle that you're going there to ask that they voted not to do before. And since Tina's now the governor, I'm guessing that she's going to remember that and might have that same question.
Yeah, the legislative history in September of 2018, we had a legislative concept. Between September and the 2019 session, we worked on that. And by partners, I mean the Levy Ready Columbia partners. And we had a governance subcommittee that was working on that. And they had government relations people that were working through what was acceptable and out. So what the actual what was entered into the 2019 session did not include assessments, and that was because of I think a healthy conversation that was had around the Levy Ready Columbia partners table. But I think what is really key is that consensus and having the conversations amongst this group and making sure that there is that agreement, because that's really what the legislators are going to be looking for.
Thanks, Colin. Thanks, Mary Helen. Corky has his hand up here in our room. Corky?
Sure, Colin, I completely agree. I think it's key that we have, hopefully, complete consensus going forward, because Mary Helen's point is also very valid, that there may very well be kickback from the legislators, and we need to be prepared for that. I'm sure you and other staff are already working on preparing for that. So hopefully we'll be in a space come February, where we'll have consensus and be able to have a strong unity behind whatever we're proposing. Getting back to Eric Mollender's question, which I thought was really, really good, but saying in the meeting tomorrow, if they say, have you given up on a fee structure, what's your answer? I guess I've got a question on it too, which is it reasonable? I know it's tricky to answer that question in this way, but is it reasonable to say, well, right now, for the next month or two, we're trying to keep all our options open. So we're still, we haven't given up on the fee structure necessarily as of tomorrow. But we want to keep the fee structure possibility in the legislation, ORS 550. We want to add in for property taxability as well. So is it reasonable for us to ask that we have 2 or even 3 different possible revenues in ORS 550? I don't want to sound too wishy-washy, but at least for the coming weeks, we have our options open.
I think that's what we're doing.
Yeah, I thought so too.
And I want to stress too that the meeting is with state agency people to reflect on Councilor Ripna's proposals, because the DMV or Department of Revenue or ODOT or somebody else has to participate and agree to the process of collecting and allocating those funds. And if they don't agree, we're not going to get it through the legislature. So the purpose of the meeting tomorrow is to talk about their willingness to go to the legislature to give us more tools, right? It's not a question of whether they're going to call us out for not doing what they said. We're actually trying to do what they said, and we're going to need their help to do it. And what we're again talking about with the legislative modifications is adding additional tools and ensuring that in the future we can continue to chip away at repression. What we've told you guys, and again, if you need more information, we're happy to try and provide it, is that our 2 largest geographically based partners to collect won't do it. They're not going to do it in the next 2 years. And so we have to come up with an alternative. We're going to keep fighting. We're going to keep going back to try and address that issue, but right now it's not working. We don't have consensus. Okay, we can't move forward with that proposal. It won't work. I'm sorry. I wish it would. It won't. So we need some additional tools, and we need you guys to rally behind those tools quickly. And we're doing our due diligence on those tools, and candidly, I don't think they're very workable, politically, financially, legally, but we're gonna try and make it work. But I can't stress enough the urgency for you guys to articulate your concerns and help us address them and move forward. You need to do that. And if we need more time with you or we need things, let's make that happen. But we're doing everything you asked to pursue these options. And I feel like you don't believe we are, and I'd like to know what else we can do.
Thanks, Jim. Nancy?
Thanks. Yeah, I want to just say a couple of points to maybe clarify, hopefully, this conversation. And that is regarding the fees on like Portland's bills or Gresham's bills. I mean, nobody wants to like put extra fees on their bills, right? But we would do it. The one thing that is really standing in the way of that is realizing how much it's going to cost. And I remember sitting here with all of you when we were saying, oh gosh, it's going to cost us 20 million to collect 20 million. And I'm not remembering the numbers exactly, but it was a huge amount of money to collect, the amount of money we need to collect. So, and the people who are paying are the people in Multnomah County within the UGB. So we don't want them paying a whole bunch for collections and stuff if we could do it another way. And I think I absolutely agree. If we can ever get a fee to work out, that would be awesome. And maybe we write notes for the new board. By the way, don't forget the fee issue because we want to get off the tax and the assessment issue. I think that's definitely great. We don't have it right now. We are pursuing Dave Rittman's ideas, which was great. Any ideas I think are welcome, but we definitely want to have our constituency paying the least amount of money for the most amount of service. And if they're paying a whole bunch for collection, then that's not, I feel like it's not being very fiduciary responsible. I'd rather lower their costs if I could. And so that's one of the reasons why I think we do, like Corky was saying, like Jim was saying, it's like, yeah, we'll have all the options in there. We go forward with the assessments now, and then hopefully we'll get something else in the future. And the other one, the other moment I wanted to take in terms of Plan B, it's like, well, the LRC agreement, the IGA between the multiple funding partners is expiring at the end of this fiscal year, so in about 10 months. So is everyone here ready to stump up some more money? It's not nearly enough, but it's a little something. So if all the cities and the legacy districts and the county and the port and metro are willing to stump up some more money for another few years, it's a drop. Well, it's more than a drop in a bucket. It's like a pint in the bucket, but it is a part of Plan B, and maybe you should get those assurances from your boards now, just in case we need a little extra float. So those are my 2 thoughts, and I appreciate all the ideas coming forward.
Thank you, Nancy. Emerald.
Hi, everyone. I just want to appreciate the discussion and the recognition of what's at stake when it comes to the legislation and the criticality of getting this passed, and just surface the reminder that the math has led the way here, in that we are aware of the fact that while fees are preferable, we know that it is ultimately going to cost the public more money. And that is a foundational fact that I think leads this shift. And that helps address, Mary Helen, some of the really thoughtful questions you had about, like, what about their strongly held positions last time? It's that we've learned more. And we're doing our best to make this work in a way that maximizes the effectiveness of the system and attempts to keep costs in control. So thank you for the discussion, and I appreciate the recognition of all of the what ifs. These are the right questions.
Good points, Emerald. Thank you. Others? Mary Helen?
I have one more, and maybe Nancy is putting you on the spot, but with the new stormwater proposal to be, that shows on people's bill that say offsite stormwater, I can't remember, disposal, shows up on the water bill. Let me see, I got my water bill right here. But the BS is trying to change. Actually, it's a BS bill from BS. Stormwater offsite drainage. I pay $61 every 3 months for that. I am not mathematically inclined, so I went online, talked to some, actually to Jennifer Devlin, and she said, read what's on the web. I didn't understand it, haven't gotten back to her. Can you kind of explain to me, because people are going to, in Portland, are going to see that BES bill about water usage, how that would be impacted if, let's just say the city of Portland said, okay, we'll put it on the water bill, we'll put it on the BES bill. How that would work and how it would impact me as a citizen. I'll just, because that's what my role is citywide land use kind of people. What that proposal is, the probability that it will happen, that kind of thing.
Thanks for the.
So are you?
Go ahead, Nancy. More. Go ahead. I don't know about BDS's changes to their bills.
Yeah, let me ask you, Mary Helen, are you asking what if they went ahead and put a fee for this district on the bill? What would that look like?
That and the new proposal of how they're going to collect that fee, or
Oh, the
yeah,
rate study?
yeah, and because I'm hearkening back to 2012, a story about Susan Bartell and I hiding behind the table at when
Yeah.
when BES took over. You were probably in the room too, but all of that, there was a lot of discontent with the fact that the drainage districts weren't getting the money and then paying the city. That the city was now going to collect the money and then pay the drainage districts to do the maintenance work. Is how I understand that it changed in
Okay.
2012.
All right. So I'll try and keep it really brief. So first of all, one of the things about collecting the fee for this district on the stormwater bill, the water stormwater bill, which is a joint bill in Portland, it's very costly to do it. That's what we were just talking about, trying to be responsible to our customers, like our customer, the urban flood safety water quality customers, right? Trying to not have extra money just on collection. And part of the difficulty is also, well, if somebody doesn't pay their bill, their $35 a year bill, are they going to shut off the water? Like there's some real unease about that. Right. So that's about the urban districts bill fees, potential fees, which we are maybe pursuing in the future, but it's not looking like it's going to work out right now. Okay. The other thing is the rate study, and we do this, we're required to do this by law, I think every 10 or 20 years. I think I've been through a couple of them. And the rate study is just looking at how fair is it? Who's paying what and how fair is it? And so they've done that over the last 3 years, I believe. I'm not exactly sure the timeline, but they've gathered information and held public. I think they went to the Penn 2 board and a couple different boards or landowner meetings or something, but they've had a bunch of process in order to make the rate charging more fair, and that is what's changing. So it's really going to look the same on your bill. It's been offsite, onsite for stormwater, like sanitary offsite, onsite. That's what I know. Maybe the names are going to change. Maybe the categories are going to change, but it's all in the effort of being more equitable to our customers. And beyond that, I'm going to sort of get out of my knowledge zone. So I'm going to end there.
If it's out of your knowledge zone, we're in trouble. My only other comment is for the jurisdictions like Wood Village that have never collected this kind of fee to put it on. How are they going to collect it if they're charged? I mean, it just seems kind of not enough time. And I know Jim has said that, but how to make a wise decision for the people that are going to be paying this. And so that's why I'm asking it, because if they're going to do this and then get, charged more in the process after the 10-year study kind of thing. So anyway, that answered. Thank
Tammy?
Thank you, Chair Fancher. A couple of things. I do understand where Councilor Rippon is coming from. I was involved in some of those early discussions, been involved in this since it started. And one of the things, he doesn't want an assessment because that's what we were told and that's what we told people. So I know where he's coming from. Whether or not we can deliver that's a different discussion, okay? But that's really where his heart is. And I was going to say, I brought forward some concerns about legality, okay? I don't work for a city or a county or anybody. I'm a volunteer. And so maybe I'm coming from a little different place than everyone else is. But SDIC council brought up some concerns legitimately. I had my own attorney look at them, he concurred with them, and we're going to get them addressed. But the fact is, those were concerns that should have been addressed. And as far as I'm hearing, are we all going through in agreement on this? And I think that I'll just say for me, if we're going to put people in personal liability situation. Okay, as a board member. That's where I don't agree. I mean, to support a revenue model that I might not necessarily think is the best one thing. But if we're gonna put ourselves into situations like that, you know, we don't need to look any further than Columbia River Fire and Rescue. What's going on with them to know that there's problems in situations like this? And it's getting addressed, but that's where my concerns. I'm not stomping my feet or anything else. I'm trying to raise a legitimate concern to my fellow board members.
Thanks, Danny. Yeah, none of us wants legal liability for something that, yeah, obviously. Thumbs up from Marianne too. Questions, comments? I'm glad we had some uncomfortable silence because it has coaxed some of you out of your silence, and you're having some discussions that we need to have. You're expressing some thoughts and opinions that are helpful, so thank you. Okay, well, we can transition now if we don't have any more questions or comments. I'm going to ask one more time and just give everyone the opportunity. If you haven't expressed what you want to express, you've been thinking about something, say it now, please, because we're going to move on to the vice chair. This is the thing that you've all come to this meeting for, which is the election of our vice chair. I'm not seeing any hands up. Okay.
Can I do a brief happy thing?
Please do.
Yeah. So we had focus groups on Tuesday evening over at the Doubletree Hotel with Dave Matz, our Bolster, and his crack team. We had a group of 10 women and a group of 10 men, all walks of life, all parts of the region. And the results of the focus group, and you'll get a full report on this at your next meeting. We're very consistent with polling. We found that after we told the men, we just had to read the one sentence explanation of the title, and they're like, a couple of yes, a couple of no, mostly undecided, need more info. 3 sentences, all of them are a yes. And on the women, it took a little bit longer. We had to get a little bit farther in. And I guess I just want to share with you that the public recognizes that nobody wants to pay for this, but it's an important thing to do. And when we talk about the 14 cents per thousand, $30 a year, and then we said, oh yeah, and we're going to charge you more to operate it too. It's going to be $50. They said, yeah, that makes sense. You got to take care of it. So I just want you to know that there is skepticism of government and public sector spending, but there's a deep acknowledgement of the need to invest responsibly and conservatively in this critical infrastructure. So with that, it was really fun to see the community go, yeah, we need to do that. Right? And metaphors like penny saved, dollar earned, pound prevention, you know, all that. So ounce prevention, pound cure. Sorry, I'm twisting my metaphors, but all of that came out, and so I just want to remind you that there is a base of goodwill among your community members to take care of this situation. So with that, thanks,
Jim. I hope you feed these people at least. Right?
We fed them a little bit, and it was actually funny because they brought cookies into our room where we were all watching and set it down, and the staff who was actually doing all the logistical work came marching right in and took the cookies back because they were for the participants, not for us. So we didn't get cookies.
Oh. Okay, well, let's transition then to our item number 3, which is voting for the vice chair. You'll probably recall many moons ago. Now, I'm not going to get the date of the meeting correct unless somebody has it and can give it to me. But we had nominations for vice chair, and we had 2 individuals at that time nominated. We had Kenny Staphenson. Kenny wasn't actually at the meeting at the time, so we couldn't confirm his availability or desire to serve on the board. We also had Eric Mueller nominated at that meeting. Because it's been so long, because we didn't proceed with a vote or a whole lot of discussion at that time, I'm going to start this by opening up for any other nominations by the board before we proceed with voting. Heather,
I would like to nominate Nancy Hendrickson, please.
okay, Heather would like to add the consideration of Nancy Hendrickson to vice chair. I need to ask Nancy if she is willing, able, amenable to this nomination.
Okay. Yeah, sure. And did Tanny get the chance to say if he was willing and able, because he wasn't at our last meeting?
Yeah, I reached out to the two individuals that were nominated before, and they did confirm that they are willing and able. I guess I'll ask Annie and Eric if they'd like to say anything at this time, or if we want to proceed to a vote. But go ahead, Tanny, would you like to say anything? Okay, Tanny's good. Eric?
I am happy to withdraw the race for Speaker of the House and suspend my campaign and defer to one of the other two wonderful opportunities to vote.
Okay, Eric is withdrawing his nomination for vice chair. So we're down to two. Okay, that does make the process a little easier for voting. I was thinking we were going to have to do a first round and a second round runoff. But I'll ask, do we have any additional nominations?
I don't have a nomination, but could I make a comment?
You can make, go ahead, Mary.
Only that I would encourage sort of I'm going to say a non-jurisdictional person, because the four people that work with the neighborhoods have a different vantage point and are volunteers and are closer in contact with the people. Nancy's wonderful. I've worked with her in any number of projects before, but we have an opportunity to kind of have someone, and Tanny's been the budget chair, so is knowledgeable of that as well. And I'm sure Nancy is, but I just wanted to make that comment as a neighborhood person, that it would be to an advantage for those people that we want to encourage to vote for the bond, that we have sort of a mixed representation and they aren't jurisdictional people.
Thank you, Mary Helen. Any other comments before we get into? I know, I believe with kind of the chair nomination, we offered those that were nominated a chance to say something, a little stump speech if they wanted to. I don't know if I want to put these poor two folks on the spot at this time. Nancy's gonna kick me under the virtual table if I do that, and Tammy's here for crying out loud. But
clarify the job responsibility.
I do want to offer it up if you want to say anything before we get into a vote. You already offered this, but
No, that I can kick you under the table.
he's got long legs. I can verify that. It's not.
I'm gonna keep kicking on.
Nancy, anything?
Tanny, whatever you want to do. We can each say a statement or each not. It's fine.
Andy's shaking his head. I think he wants one each of us. So let's see how many. And Wendy did a little research on our bylaws around this process, and we need 9 yeses, or we need a majority of those that are present today, and because we do.
We need nine votes, that's the majority, and that's the
That's
board.
everybody today that's here.
No, there are 15.
Okay, okay. So we may or may not achieve the 9 votes for one of these two candidates. And at that point, we're stuck for now. You're stuck with me as your only chair rep. But we may get there. We don't know. So, okay, we're not doing stump speeches. I also asked to, this is always an awkward process, right? We don't want to, folks voting for one candidate or other doesn't necessarily represent that, you you're trying to have an alliance with one or the other, you have more confidence with one or the other, we just need to get this done. We need to elect a vice chair. So it's always an awkward process. Was there any way we could do this and not have to do a public vote? And the answer was no. We all need to make a vote for one of the two candidates. So I think we can't do this in chat either, as far as just everybody putting their tab and read it out. We do that as opposed to voice voting.
I think it'll be easier for me if we just do the voice vote. It's gonna be hard for me to travel in the chat.
Okay. That's a good point. Yeah, we could do a show of hands. Let's do that.
We'll have to turn on cameras on. Is there a
Yeah, you can raise your virtual hand. How about that? That's a little easier for us to see. And for this first round of voting, I'm the chair. I've got to work closely with whoever the vice chair is.
If this doesn't work, I just reserve the right to call on people.
Of course. Okay, so I'm going to say, and just for this first round going through, as chair, I'm going to abstain my vote, just for now, just to see where it ends up, if that's okay. So all those in favor of Tammy as vice chair, please raise your virtual hand or your real hand if you're here. And okay, we've got Courtney, we've got Eric Mueller, we've got Mary Ellen, we've got Seth, we've got Eric. So I see, and Tammy. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Courtney and Tammy.
Oh, sorry.
You have what you need, Wendy?
Yeah.
All those in favor of having Nancy serve as vice chair, please raise your hand. We have 7. We have 6 and 7. We're not going to get to 9 in any case.
Everybody vote? I'm not sure that Brent voted.
Who?
We asked Brent to vote. I'm not sure that Brent Carvey.
Brent, we didn't see a vote from you.
I want to note also, did we get a vote from Bob Salinger, or is that just a hand down now?
Did you get a vote from Bob?
I didn't see Bob.
I thought I saw his hand, but maybe I imagined it.
Bob and Brent,
Bob, are you there?
if you're there, can you please?
Yeah, I had my hand up for Nancy.
Okay, we had it up for Nancy. That was 7. Brent, if you can hear us, we'd like to know if you're voting for Tanny or
Sorry about that. I was busy taking something else. What are we voting on? Sorry about that.
We're voting on vice chair of this group, and we have 2 individuals nominated. We have Tanny Stephenson and we have Nancy Hendricks.
Tanny.
Okay, Tanny. So that's 7 and 7. Thanks, everybody.
Plus you abstaining.
And I abstain.
You know, that's called a double win.
Wouldn't
You
matter.
get both of them.
Thank you all for your indecisiveness and for your vote of confidence, I suppose. If I go down, one of you is going to be forced to step up. I'm not sure which one yet.
Should we go for it and vote on the bond referral now?
Yeah, should we do that? This was fitting. I think this was fitting today. We'll come back later. We'll retool and we'll have some discussions with folks, and we will come back later when we have more voters. All right. We're at 4:16. We're a little early today, but is there any business good of the order? Any announcements? Heather, do you have something, or your hands are still up? Okay. General announcements. Not seeing anything. Thanks for your time today. Thanks for the discussion. I think it was good. We'll see you next time. Meeting adjourned.